we continue with our next sessions, which are like the paper presentations by all the scholars. And towards this, the one to come is Ms. Kausiki. She's studying, she's a student at IIT.
Namaste, I am Kausiki. My friends Varuneshwar and Aniruddha, three of us are doing PhD at CISTS, IIT, Cell for Indian Science and Technology in Sanskrit. We've been studying the Saptarṣi cycle for some time. So we thought we will share what we have read. We just realized that we are over-ambitious to have chosen this topic. But we have come to seek the Seers for your advice and suggestions and inputs and some direction as to on this topic. Yeah, this is about the Saptarṣi cycle, the mysterious Saptarṣi cycle, which is referred to in the Purāṇās and some of the Siddhāntas and Samhita, etc. Saptarṣis, as we know, even yesterday some scholars have mentioned, this is traditionally identified as the Big Dipper in the Ursamajor constellation in the northern sky. The Bhāgavatapurāṇa mentions that the Rishayah, they are moving, they are seen moving in the clockwise direction in the northern sky around the pole, Dhruvaloka. We have given the names also. Kratu, Pulaha, Pulastya, Atri, Angira, Vasishta, and Marichi are the 7 stars in that order. Okay, Bhagavata says they are moving in a clockwise direction, but we understand that in diurnal motion is anti-clockwise, at least from India, the way we observe it. So, only clockwise motion we could see is in the precession cycle of 26,000 years. But the literary texts talk about a 2,700 year cycle. We'll see the references. Next, please. Can you zoom in? Viṣṇupurāṇa mentions that Yavat Parikshito Janma. Actually, the context is in the description of the dynasties, the kings who ruled in Kali from post-Mahabharata war. They are enlisting the dynasties and kings and in the framework of a Saptarṣi calendrical cycle. And they are saying that at the time of the birth of Parikshit or at the beginning of Kali or when Bhagavan Krishna left this world for heaven, from that moment Kali started. And at that time, the Saptarshis were in Magha Nakshatra. And till Nanda's coronation, Nanda is the king of the Nanda dynasty, Mahapadmananda. Till his time, 1015 years have passed. This is one version. Another Purāṇa gives another version, that is Panchashatottaram, 1500 years. There are several versions. However, this version says that in 10-15 years, Saptarshis have moved from Magha Nakshatra to Purvashadha. Now, Saptarshinam tu yau purvau drishyate hyuditau divi tayostu madhye nakshatram drishyate yat samam nishi. How to identify in which star they stay is what is given in this. The first 2 stars which rise, when they are rising in the sky, the star seen in line with the in-between midpoint of those 2 stars. The star seen rising in the east is the star in which they are posited for 100 years is what is explained here. We could make the meaning we could make from this is this. And as I mentioned, Tetu Parikshite Kale, Maghaswasan Dvijottama, then started the 1200 years, divine years, Kali. Kali started then, Kali age, which is of 1200 divine years. Divine year is 360 human years. So 432,000 years is the Kali duration mentioned here. Then this same Saptarṣīnām tuyau purvo drishyate, this is seen in other Purāṇās also. Next slide, please. Same in Matsyapurāṇa, the same verse is seen. And Matsyapurāṇa gives this, that Saptarṣiyastada pramshu pradipten agnina sama. Saptarshis were earlier seen to have been along with the, shining bright along with Agni. Agni perhaps is referred to Kritika, Agni Nakshatra. And then after 2700 years, they are again, during the time of the Andhra kings, they are again in Kritika. That's what they're saying. And it says that Saptarshis move for 60 divine years. Sama divya smṛta śruti is what is mentioned here. Interestingly, they're talking about a 21,600 years cycle also. The next one. Same sloka again repeats. See the method of observation, basically to see the midpoint of the first two stars rising. Same thing, Magha yuktaha kale parikshite shatam. Next, please. Bhāgavatapurāṇa also says the same slokas, more or less, we see from the Bhāgavatapurāṇa also, which I mentioned. From Magha, they moved to Purvashadha during, this 10-15 years, or 1050 years, or 1115 years. There are several versions mentioned in several Purāṇās. Now, this is what is we found in the Purāṇās. In Brihad Samhita of Varahamihira, in the Saptarṣicharadhyaya, we have the reference to Vruddhagarga's opinion, in which the famous oft-quoted shloka is Senasan Maghasu Munayaha Shashati Prudhvim Yudhishthire Nrupatau Shadvika Panchadvyutas Shakakalas Tasya Ragnascha. So, scholars try to see traditionally from the Purāṇās we know that the beginning of Kali, then demise of Krishna, Mahabharata war, Yudhishthira, and birth of Parikshita, all are placed around the same time, in 10-15 years. Okay, but this shloka is a problem because it says the distance between Yudhishthira's time and Shakakala is given as 2526 years. This place is apparently, if the Shakakala in this is taken as Shalivahan Shaka of 78 CE, this places Yudhishthira's reign as in 653 Kali, 2448 BC. Now, we come to know from Vruddhagarga's opinion that Kalidvapara Sandhotu Sthitaste Pitru Daivatam. They are in Magha Nakshatra. Pitru Daivata is Magha Nakshatra. And but Varahamihira's words places this in 653 Kali. But that is the problem here. Some scholars have suggested that this Shakakala may be an older Shakakala of 7th century BCE. Or 6th century BCE, which would again place Yudhishthira's time in 3102 BCE. I'm not going into that topic right now because we want to discuss more about the formulae given, the discussion around the count of the position of the Saptarshis in some Siddhāntas. Kalhana's Rajatarangini also refers to Varahamihira's shloka of Asan Maghasu. But Kalhana, interestingly, doesn't combine both Saptarshikala, which we find in current Panchangas also, the Laukikabda and Saptarshikala, which are identified as one now. Kalhana doesn't mention them as the same. He mentions Laukikabda separately in terms of 24th year, he says, but Saptarshi's cycle is again mentioned as per Purāṇic tradition only. Like he says, they were Yudhishthira's time when they were in Magha Nakshatra. That's all. He doesn't give any count to that number. We don't know when these both got identified together in history. This is just to see that till now the sources which we have seen agree that it's a 100-year stay in each nakshatra assigned to the Saptarṣis, either backward. Some Purāṇas talk about a forward movement, some count backward movement. All of them agree that they were in Magha nakshatra during Kalindvapar Sandhi. Yeah. Next slide, please. So coming to the Siddhāntas, Mahāsiddhānta of Āryabhaṭa II mentions that the Saptarṣis make Kuni Dudi Dudi Ja, 15,99998 revolutions in a kalpa. That comes to around 1600 in a Mahayuga, which is again 2700 years cycle. Vateshwara Siddhānta, we find this verse which mentions Bhujagoshthayaha, 1692 revolutions it makes in a Mahayuga. I don't know why, what made him give this correction. He says, according to this, then it should come to some 2520 years, or Saptarshis were staying in each nakshatra for 94.5 years or something. It is not Katapayadi, Aryabhatiya system. Aryabhatiya system. This is not Katapayadi, no? Aryabhatiya system, that is different.
No, this is Āryabhaṭa II. This is Katapayadi, but this Katapayadi instead of
It's different.
left to right.
Okay, it goes right to, okay. Then not the traditional Katapayadi. Okay.
Right to left. Amatogati
Dakshinataha. So, Vateshwara Siddhānta, in Saptarṣishara we find that he mentions Nagadrug Ganitaihi Varshaihi Kalehe, same again 2700 years. And Adhva, he says Kaligata Varshaihi Manunitaihi Chapareshantaihi. He is referring to Lallāchārya's formula given. From the Kali year, you subtract 14, Manunitaihi, and then divide by 100. We will look at that. Vateshwara is referring to Lallāchārya.
that statement that the first two nakshatras and the middle point. Do Siddhāntas mention that?
No, sir. No, so the method of
No,
observing.
not method. Saptarṣi being associated with a nakshatra means you observe the first two stars and the.
They don't mention. They don't
They don't
mention. They don't
What
mention.
is this? I didn't understand it. First two stars being what?
No. The Purāṇās are mentioning that Saptarṣi is supposed to be in a nakshatra means that the first two stars, when they write that
The
Viṣṇupurāṇa.
pointers.
So
In
that
this you can see.
so you have to explain that first to people.
I just did.
No, only Brihad Samhita mentions.
I've done a whole simulation.
I know.
So I'll talk about it.
Brihad Samhita mentions that Prabhudayotopya Vivara Drujunnayati Tatra Samyuktaha. When the star on the eastern horizon, eastern side is rising, the star on the when the Saptarshis are clear, conspicuous, the star on the eastern sky rising is the position, is the star in which they are posited for 100 years, is what it says. And one version says that they always rise along with the Arundhati.
Because the star means radius in
That's all.
That is where that verse
In Brihad Samhita.
in that Samhita there are two versions.
One shloka has two versions. So,
but because of this thing, then 8 minutes. Star with radius.
So this is the formula Lallāchārya gives to count the position of the Saptarshis. He says from the Kali year subtract 14 and divide by 100 to get the number of stars from Virinchi Nakshatra. Virinchi Nakshatra is taken as Prajapati Nakshatra, Rohini, and Mallikarjuna Suri in his commentary takes it as Rohini, whereas Munīśvara says that if we take this as Rohini, we are not able to agree. He's not, Lallāchārya cannot be reconciled with any of the other scholars like Varahamihira, what Varahamihira is saying. But if it is taken as Virinchi, Virinchi is taken as Shravana Nakshatra, then it agrees with Brahmasiddhānta. We will look at the reference in the Brahmasiddhānta also. But Mallikarjuna Suri, the commentator of Lallāchārya, takes it as a Rohini Nakshatra and says in 1113 CE, in 12th century CE, it is going to be in Mula Nakshatra. That is what Mallikarjuna Suri says. Now next we come to Vateshwara scholar, Vateshwara 9th century scholar. In his Karanasara, I think, but that is not available to us. We come to know from Al-Biruni that in Karanasara, Vateshwara has given one algorithm to count the position of the Saptarṣi year. And this is what it says. The base year should, you subtract 821 from the base year and then multiply into 47, then add 68,000 and divide it by 10,000 to get the zodiacal signs traversed by the Saptarshis. And Al-Biruni says that at least around his time, 1031 CE, they were in Anuradha Nakshatra. He is, we can see that he has followed Vateshwara's this formula and then came to that conclusion that during his time, in 1031 CE, 953 Shaka, they were in Anuradha Nakshatra.
Al-Biruni says he observed or
he doesn't say he observed, sir.
He says he calculated it to be.
He doesn't say he calculated also, but he says they are in Anuradha.
He says this is what it means for
yeah, but we can make out that he has followed this. Following this formula, we can we will see that in 1031 CE they are in Anuradha Nakshatra, counting forward from Ashwini Adi.
Oh. So Sayana longitude.
No, not Sayana. Nirayana only.
So Nirayana longitude cannot change, no?
It won't change. It is only a count. It's just arithmetic.
No, it is not talking of the longitude.
Nothing to do with longitude.
The meaning aside is not
Just
changing.
yeah.
What is the star rising when the Saptarṣi is rising? See, that is the thing. That can
No,
change.
counting 100 years. They are just counting 100 or 94.5 years. That's
the
all.
meaning of Saptarṣi being in a
No, we have not come to it, sir. We don't know what it is. Astronomically, what it is, we couldn't make out still.
We did a simulation of this, and the shloka clear. Matsyapurāṇa says, take the first two stars of Saptarṣi, take the vector where it is point, and the nakshatra to which it is pointing is the nakshatra of Saptarṣi. And it turns out that in 1200 BC, it is exactly where Parikshit's birth is supposed to be. So that agrees with Mahabharata. The idea was at that time they were looking for a 100-year calendar because they had 1000-year calendars from precession, but they were otherwise there was one annual calendar. And you get 30-year calendar from Jupiter and so on. So they were looking for a 100-year calendar. At that time, it actually precedes within a 100 year and goes to next constellation. So everybody was excited saying Saptarṣi will give you a calendar. Unfortunately, because it's not a linear system, it's a sign function system, it takes 700 years to get the next constellation through, nakshatra through. So they give up the calendar. But the idea that Saptarṣi calendar remains persistent, but the original astronomical observations of Mahabharata time, which showed that it moves through one nakshatra in 100 years, is lost. So subsequently, it is all mathematical, but the original idea was that that first two vectors would point to a nakshatra, and it does points to Maga at Parikshit's coronation. So
But
Mahabharata,
around what time, sir?
1200 BC.
1200 BC. So you are placing
So Mahabharata comes around
Parikshit in
1200. Yeah, so Mahabharata comes around 1200 BC in that calculation, in Saptarṣi calendar. But subsequent calendar movement, it takes 800 years. You can
But
actually
that is not.
Yeah, so
In
the
the
first two
Purāṇās.
star of the Saptarṣi you take, as a vector, and see which nakshatra it points to.
But that will be always same, because
No, it doesn't. No, because of the precession of the Earth, there are subtle, in fact, that vector changes. See, eventually it becomes pole star, the tail of the...
that is only, but star positions remain fixed.
It changes, believe me, it changes because it's close to precession. Yeah, so that's 100 years to go through one nakshatra. And
This
that
is
where the
about your
2700 comes up. Yeah,
subtle,
that is where the
subtle
2700
effect of precession. That article, sir, that
So
is in
2700
2100 to 2200. You said it is in Pushya Nakshatra.
Okay, you complete.
But I remember
But there's
you
a
mentioned that
direct
it is 2100 to 2200 years. It's a one-time event that happened in Pushya Nakshatra. That's what you mentioned. Okay. So this is Vateshwara's formula. Next slide. So this is what Munīśvara's Siddhāntasārvabhauma gives. Based on, he discusses some verses from Brahmasiddhānta of Śākalyasamhita. And then based on that, he gives this formula. Vrajanti varsheshta kala atotra grahopajivyabdaganah khakangaihi hino dvinighna스thiti bhir vibhakto lavadikoja pramukhat kratuh syat. Formula to get position of Saptarshis. Subtract 600, multiply by 2, divide by 15 and divide by 30. We will look at the verses. In the Brahmasiddhānta of Śākalyasamhita, we couldn't find any translation or commentary of this, so we tried to figure out whatever we could understand. We did some important phrases we translated. So, Yugadau Viṣṇutarāyah Kriturbhādya Samahita. According to Śākalyasamhita, at Yugadi, they were in Viṣṇutara, which is considered as Shravana Nakshatra, as against the Purāṇic belief that they were in Magha Nakshatra. But this Yugadi, whether it is Mahayugadi or Kali Yugadi, also, to be, even we were saying that even if it is taken as Mahayuga or Kali Yuga, it will come to Shravana only, Viṣṇutara. So, in the next verse, they give the amshas, longitude, celestial, ecliptic longitudinal difference between, with respect to Kratu, how many degrees they are situated. And then Vikshepamsa also they give, which we will show in the next slide. Pratyabdam Ragatistesham Ashtavalipta Munīśvara. They are agreeing that every year 8-minute movement. Obviously, they have counted 2700 years over 21,600 minutes in 360 degrees. And then they are saying that every year 8-minute movement is given. So, yeah, they are saying that Kvachit Akasmate Bhagavan Uttare Charaha. And Khaka Nakshatra Varshani Tishtanti Munivallabha, 2700 years they were, moving or staying. Tishtanti. Next slide. So next I'll show. This is what if we compare the longitudes and latitudes given in Brahmasiddhānta, more or less it agrees with the modern latitudes and longitudes. So, Al-Biruni, as I mentioned, Al-Biruni says in 1031 CE, they were in Saptarṣis were in Anuradha Nakshatra. Ballalasena in Adbhutasāgara mentions that in 1082 Shaka, that is 1160, Saptarṣis moved 60 years in Vishakha Nakshatra. So if we compare these two, it indicates a backward movement. See, in 1031 they were in Vishakha Nakshatra and 1160 they were in, 1031 they were in Anuradha Nakshatra and 1160 they were in Vishakha Nakshatra. As I already mentioned, Mallikarjuna Suri says in 12th century they were in Mula Nakshatra, following Lalla's formula, Lallāchārya's formula. He says, counting from Rohini, he says they were in Mula Nakshatra, which doesn't agree with Ballalasena's statement. He says they were in Vishakha Nakshatra in 12th century, whereas Mallikarjuna Suri says, following Lallāchārya's count, they were in Mula Nakshatra. Whether they were counting backward or forward in the reverse order or in the forward or backward order, they are not agreeing with each other, most of them. So, but what we could understand is that Lallāchārya and Purāṇās give 8-minute movement and Vateshwara gives 8.46 minute movement. This is what we could see. Please. Some observations which we already mentioned. Munīśvara places Saptarṣis Shravana Nakshatra at the beginning of Kali on the basis of Brahmasiddhānta. Lallāchārya's formula agrees at all times with Munīśvara only if Virinchi star is taken as Abhijit. According to this, in 2448 BCE or 653 Kali, Saptarṣis were in Ashwini and not in Magha. The statement from Al-Biruni that 1031 CE Saptarṣis are in Anuradha can be arrived using Vateshwara's algorithm. According to Purāṇās, Lallāchārya and Munīśvara, the Saptarṣi cycle is 2700 years, and according to Vateshwara, Saptarṣi cycle is 2553 years.
No, can you go back to the Viṣṇupurāṇa verse?
Viṣṇupurāṇa. Third slide, I think. Bhāgavatapurāṇa.
No.
It's the same.
Okay, whichever one. Kayostu madhye nakshatram drishyate Yat samam nishi. So that is the one. So what is your explanation of this?
When we couldn't see any astronomical phenomena, we couldn't see.
What do you understand from this?
When the first two stars, Kratu and Pulaha, are seen rising, maybe Varun is better
No, because
answering.
Vahya says,
No, we have not done any stimulations or anything, sir.
when Vahya says you take the first two stars, the direction in which they point. Whereas this says something in the middle.
In the middle of the, or in line with the midpoint of the first two nakshatras.
I think we have to make a few points
No,
Please, sir.
because the discussion has encouraged me to join in, if you don't mind. The Viṣṇupurāṇa Vyakhyana, which says how it should be seen, when it was written, that is a Sridhariya and the Viṣṇuchittiya, they belong to later periods. Those periods have great regard for the Vyakhyanakāras, they were realistic. During that period, Saptarṣis, Ursamajor, was no more circumpolar. So Udaya would be the head of Udaya. So it was a rising. And correspondingly, they would have seen some star. That's all what they would have said. That is how they would have interpreted. That is my first reaction.
Now, can you tell me again last sentence? When they are raising, right?
No, they are not circumpolar.
They are not circumpolar.
They are not circumpolar.
So then,
So those two, that you see, originally Saptarṣi qualities, they have to be circumpolar. Number one, that property would have been lost by the time the Vyakhyana was done. So it would be a little bit, we have to be careful. Because what sky they took, how they did the Vyakhyana for that, for the original shloka. The meaning might have been different. That is what I want to say. Then secondly, your reference to Śākalyasamhita and the 8-minute thing and the Kratu and the Vishnu Nakshatra, they tell me a totally different story. Reason is this, the names of the Saptarṣis have been changed. The Nakshatra identification has not changed, but from the original time it has changed, from the Vedic time. The Vedic Saptarṣis, from the Ashwalayana Sutra, they are not this.
Yeah.
Even in the Mahabharata, in the Adi Parva, there is a Saptarṣi statement. They are different from the Saptarṣi statement which are given later. So, who was
Brihat Samhita and Brihat Samhita gives the same names, sir.
Sorry?
Varahamihira's Brihat Samhita gives these same names. Kratu Pula Pulastya.
No. That's what I'm. But that is not the one which is there in the Adi Parva of Mahabharata, and also not the Vedic Saptarṣi names. The sequence.
Atri is.
Atri, Bhrigu, Kutsa, Vasishta, Gautama, Kashyapa. They have to be the names for the original one, you know. And Agastya Ashtamaha, that is the one, the Gotra Pravartakas, the Saptarṣis, and also the original 7 Rishis related to the 7 Rigveda Mandalas, the family names. They are the canonical Saptarṣis. That is how it is. Even Taittiriya Aranyaka, when it says Saptarṣi Nakshatra Shankruta Avasan, it says. So we have to be careful with this. The reason is the following. Kratu is the problem. Kratu is actually Yajna, which is in the Śiṣyadhīvṛddhitantra Mandala. And that is above the Vishnu Nakshatra. If Vishnu is the Hridayam, when it is rotating, it is going to be above that. And at that time it is possible, the movement of Reho or Dhruva was observed, and they took it to be some 8, whatever it may be. Amsha may mean sometimes minutes, sometimes may degrees, sometimes maybe only in the Vedic sense, only a part, some part. What the value we don't know. Shravana as Vaishnava is there as the Devata, not reference to the nakshatra itself in the Vedas. So we have to discriminate between the nakshatra.
Viṣṇupurāṇa, even in the deities of the chart which you published actually in the Rigveda Jyotisha.
No, that is in the Siddhāntic time it is there, I don't deny that. I don't deny.
But this 2700-year cycle is not mentioned in the Vedic.
No,
it is
haven't
not.
come
Yeah,
across that.
yeah, it is
No,
not
but this is just a discussion.
Yes, sir.
So the whole this Saptarṣimaṇḍala is extremely intriguing. Now, Brahmasamhita attributes it to Vṛddhagarga. Kashyapa, not Kashyapa. There is another Siddhānta Raja also. He also says it is a Vṛddhagarga Vachana which is there and he is quoting it. Kashyapa, which also is a later text, that also said is as per Vṛddhagarga. But the 15 manuscripts we have collected of Vṛddhagarga Jyotika, it is not there. And that Anga is replaced by Yuga-Purāṇa, where I would expect, Varahamihira says Saptarṣimaṇḍala, and before that the other things are there. In that exact place is a text called Yuga-Purāṇa, which of course has nothing to do with astronomy, it is more historical. So, you have to keep this in mind. And what you said about Adbhutasāgara is correct. He gives that, and if you count it backwards, you get his time. That 1031 CE or so. Now, it is the Lala's formula only you can use. But you have to count from Rohini backwards, not forward.
Yeah.
Then you
End of Rohini backward, not the beginning of
then
Rohini.
you get the correct answer.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
That's
all that
what
we
I
did,
want.
but we thought it is too confusing even to
But
present.
astronomers here are asking, the relative positions of the stars don't change. So what is meant by this nakshatra changing? Is there any explanation for this?
Astronomical explanation we couldn't arrive at. Sir, it could be, see, from the Brahmasiddhānta, can you change it to next slides? Some verses are there which talk about Karkadistha, Mrigadistha, we have to get into it. We didn't go deep into it. It is something related to precession only, maybe
Must
some
be.
sub-effect
What
of
exactly the
precession.
meaning is basically? What is the meaning is
We couldn't make out. It says that this chakra is upachara, upacharyate, it says.
You are saying
So something imaginary or...
one nakshatra in 700 years is happening.
So what happens is that vector is pointing to whatever correction that constellation, and then that vector slowly drifts because it's the sine theta function of the zenith, of the pole.
No, but relatively since the stars are not changing.
Yes, but that vector,
European point will change.
sorry, the vector location as it is pointed out drifts a little. It's just a little. One constellation, the vector changes because of the fact that it's close to the rotation point. I mean, in principle, sphere is a big sphere and fixed stars.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you can start calculating the vector location and this thing, the slight distortion due to the fact that you are very close to the pole and not towards the equator, gives you that slight
Where does
distortion.
your paper appear?
Yeah, you can actually IJHS.
IJHS.
Excuse me, sir. I have a small comment here.
Yes.
So,
Use mic.
here, so, as you say, like one time we see that 100, approximately 100, and then later astronomers don't talk about it or even try to refine it. But we see here that Bhatteshwara changes it to
1692
instead
revolution.
of saying to 2700, he says 2550 or something like
Yes.
that. So he refines it. And there are other astronomers who kind of change the formula or they have different reference.
They have not rubbished it completely.
Yeah.
But I think Kamalakara in his commentary on Munīśvara's Siddhāntasārvabhauma, somewhere they say that we can't see, there is no astronomical phenomena discovered, but
Yeah, so,
they will
but
be
my
seen,
question-
unseen, moving around the Dhruva, unseen, something like that.
Kamalakara says.
Kamalakara says that.
So my question is that, see, if it is only once that 100 years has been observed and it is fixed, then why would a later astronomer try to create a formula which is approximately 100 or someone else coming up saying that a similar thing? So, and why didn't anyone say that, okay, this is not what we have to, this 100 years is not what we see. It changes from 100 to 700. None of them talk about it. But they refer it. So that's my, and that's the motivation to do this paper and collect all the things.
My personal. Okay. Now I'm going by my personal opinion. My personal opinion is they were looking for 100. They have a calendar of 1000 years in precession. They have 1 year calendar in the solar calendar. So they were looking for a 100-year calendar to see if something fits. And this looked to be fitting like that 100-year calendar. The moment they realize that it is not happening, it gets disconnected from astronomy. Then you just keep on adding 100.
What I believe is that there might be some 100-year, and we are yet to see it in that lens.
That may be, but Saptarṣi, vector pointing 100 years, it comes correct at the end of Mahabharata. That much I can tell you.
Yes.
So that would be a good enough
See,
definition.
that based on this, you are saying Mahabharata time is that.
Yeah, I mean, and
Because
there are other evidences of
traditionally-
Mahabharata. No, for example, if you look at flooding in Kurukshetra, etc., there are physical evidences which seem to suggest similar dates.
The only hard point is that the data set is only one point.
Yes, the data set is only
And
one.
that's why I'm personally not convinced.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I'm saying, it's an opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
so much.
It was very engaging discussion, and we'll